Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
The quality of the light in the room was the first thing Tracy Quartermaine registered, a cold, gray pallor that seeped around the edges of the heavy velvet drapes. It wasn't the gentle hue of a cloudy dawn or the soft dimness of evening, it was the sterile, unforgiving light of a truth she was not yet ready to face. Her head throbbed with a dull, persistent ache, a remnant of the chaos that had shattered the previous night, a night that had begun with the promise of vindication and had ended in a maelstrom of violence and confusion. She shifted on the silk settee, her body feeling both leaden and fragile, as if a single wrong move might cause her to splinter into 1,000 unrecognizable pieces. Downstairs, the great house of Windermere was quiet, a forced, unnatural silence that felt more ominous than any clamor. It was the quiet of a fortress under siege, the quiet of held breaths and whispered fears. Somewhere in the labyrinth of stone and history, her son, Dylan, was likely being tended to, his own ordeal a fresh wound on the family's collective psyche. And somewhere, too, was Nicholas Cassadine, the master of this dark domain, a man whose own soul seemed to be a battleground for the legacies of his ancestors. But Tracy's thoughts, sharp and terrified, were not for Nicholas or even entirely for Dylan in that moment. They were spiraling around one person, a fixed point of both comfort and escalating dread, her brother, Ronnie. Ronnie had always been her anchor in the turbulent Quartermaines sea. While others, her father Edward, her brothers Alan and Ned, even her late sister-in-law Monica, had been swept up in the currents of power, money, and dramatic entanglements, Ronnie had been different. He was quieter, steadier. He was the one who'd bring her a cup of tea after a blistering argument with Edward, the one who remembered her birthday when the others were too preoccupied with corporate takeovers. He wasn't weak, far from it, there was a quiet strength in him, a resilience that Tracy had always admired and, if she were honest, relied upon. In the cutthroat world of the Quartermaines, Ronnie was her sanctuary. The events of the previous night replayed in her mind in jagged, disjointed fragments. The confrontation at the Metro Court. The shocking revelation that had turned the entire town on its head. The scramble, the panic. And through it all, Ronnie had been there. He'd found her, his face a mask of brotherly concern, his hands firm on her shoulders as he guided her away from the epicenter of the scandal. He had taken her to Windermere, insisting it was the one place no one would think to look for them, a sanctuary under the dubious protection of the Cassadines. He had been her rock, her protector. But now, in the cold light of day, the details of his protection began to curdle in her memory. It was the small things, the inconsistencies that her sharp, analytical mind, honed by decades of corporate warfare and family politics, could not ignore. The urgency in his voice that had bordered on panic, not for her, but for something else. The way he had been so adamant about them leaving immediately, before the police could secure the scene properly. The fact that he'd known about the secret passageways in the hotel, knowledge he'd explained away with a vague mention of a past business dealing, but which now seemed improbably convenient. And his hands, when he'd helped her into the car, had there been a faint, dark smudge near his cuff? She'd thought it was ink at the time. Now, she wondered if it was something far more sinister. A soft knock on the door made her jump. "Come in," she said, her voice raspy. It was Nicholas. He looked as though he hadn't slept, his aristocratic features drawn and pale. "Tracy," he began, his tone carefully neutral. "The police are downstairs. They're not here to arrest anyone yet, but they're asking questions. They're piecing together everyone's movements last night." Tracy's heart hammered against her ribs. And they're focusing on a few key pieces of evidence. Security footage from a camera they didn't think was operational. A witness who saw a man matching a certain description leaving a service corridor near where it happened. Nicholas's gaze was piercing. They're being circumspect, but their line of questioning is leading in a very specific direction. What direction? Tracy asked, though a part of her already knew. A cold knot was tightening in her stomach. They're looking for a motive, Nicholas said quietly. They know about the rift between Monica and certain members of your family. They know about the changes to the will, the corporate maneuvering. They're constructing a narrative of financial desperation. That's absurd. Tracy snapped, the Quartermaine pride flaring instinctively. No one in our family would kill over money. Even as she said the words, she knew their hollowness. The Quartermaine history was littered with acts of breathtaking betrayal, all motivated by the almighty dollar and the power it represented. Hadn't she herself contemplated ruinous schemes against her own flesh and blood in the past? Is it? Nicholas countered, his voice still low. Monica's latest move with the ELQ shares would have effectively neutered a significant block of family power. It would have marginalized several key players. In the eyes of the law, that's a powerful motive. Tracy fell silent, her mind racing. Monica. Dr. Monica Quartermaine, the heart and conscience of the family for so long. She had been a pillar, a voice of reason in their often irrational world. Her death was not just a personal tragedy, it was an earthquake that had destabilized the very foundation of their lives. And someone had caused that earthquake. Someone had extinguished that light. I need to speak to Ronnie, Tracy said suddenly, standing up. The movement made her dizzy. He's in the library, Nicholas informed her. He's been on the phone all morning, he says, trying to line up the family's legal team. Of course he had. The diligent brother. The fixer. Tracy nodded, not trusting herself to speak further, and swept past Nicholas out of the room. The long, torchlit corridors of Windermere seemed to stretch and warp before her, the portraits of stern-faced Cassidines seeming to watch her progress with cynical amusement. She felt like she was walking a gangplank, each step taking her closer to a truth from which there would be no return. She found him in the library, as Nicholas had said. He wasn't on the phone. He was standing by the great stone fireplace, staring into the cold, empty grate, a crystal tumbler of amber liquid clutched in his hand. He looked older, the lines on his face more deeply etched than she remembered. Ronnie, she said, her voice softer than she intended. He turned, and for a fleeting, unguarded moment, she saw something in his eyes that made her blood run cold. It wasn't grief, or worry, or even fear. It was a profound, bone-deep exhaustion, and something else, a furtive, calculating sharpness that was here and gone in an instant, replaced by a familiar, brotherly concern. Tracy, he said, forcing a small, tired smile. You should be resting. It's been a hell of a night. It has, she agreed, closing the heavy oak door behind her. The click of the latch sounded unnaturally loud in the vast, book-lined room. The police are here. Nicholas says they're asking questions. Ronnie's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Let them ask. We have nothing to hide. Our lawyers will handle it. They're talking about motives, Ronnie. Financial motives. Monica's ELQ play. He took a slow sip of his drink. It's the most obvious angle. The police are nothing if not predictable. They'll chase that until they hit a dead end, and then they'll have to look elsewhere. Will it be a dead end? Tracy asked, her gaze fixed on him. He met her eyes, and this time, the calculation was closer to the surface. What are you asking me, Tracy? I'm asking you what happened last night. Not the sanitized version you told me in the car. The truth. After you left the gala, before you found me. Where did you go? A muscle twitched in his cheek. I told you. I went to the parking garage to get the car. I heard the commotion and came back to find you. The service corridor on the third floor, Tracy pressed, her voice trembling slightly. The one that leads to the administrative offices. The police have a witness who saw someone there. Someone who looked like you. Ronnie set his glass down on the mantelpiece with a sharp, definitive click. There are a lot of men in tuxedos in a hotel during a black tie event, Tracy. It's circumstantial. Is it? She whispered, the pieces clicking into place with a horrifying, internal finality. The panic, the urgency, the knowledge of the hotel's layout, the smudge on his cuff. It wasn't just a collection of oddities anymore, it was a constellation, and it was forming a picture she could no longer ignore. Ronnie, tell me you didn't. Tell me you had nothing to do with what happened to Monica. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a physical presence in the room, thick and suffocating. He didn't deny it. He didn't get angry. He simply looked at her, and the mask of the gentle, dependable brother fell away completely, revealing the desperate, hardened man beneath. The transformation was so complete it stole the air from Tracy's lungs. "She was going to ruin us, Tracy," he said, his voice low and utterly devoid of emotion. "Not just me. You. Dylan. All of us. She was sentimental and weak, and she was going to hand over our birthright to a bunch of strangers and upstarts. She was dismantling everything Father built, everything we are." Tracy stared at him, her mind refusing to process the words. This wasn't her brother. This was a stranger wearing her brother's face. "So you killed her?" The words were a choked sob. "Monica? Our Monica?" "It was an opportunity," he said, his tone chillingly pragmatic. "The blackout, the chaos. It was the perfect cover. I just went to talk to her, to make her see reason one last time. She was in her office, going over the damned paperwork. She wouldn't listen. She was so self-righteous, so sure of her moral high ground." His eyes glazed over, looking at a scene only he could see. "We argued. She turned her back on me. And I saw the letter opener on her desk. It was just there. It was fast. She didn't suffer." A wave of pure, unadulterated horror washed over Tracy, so powerful it brought a metallic taste to her mouth. She stumbled back, her hand flying to her lips to stifle a scream. The room tilted on its axis. It was fast. She didn't suffer. He was trying to comfort her. He had murdered the woman who had been a sister to them both, the woman who had healed their family's wounds countless times, and he was trying to frame it as an act of mercy. "You monster," she breathed, the words barely audible. "You utter monster." Ronnie's eyes narrowed. "Don't be dramatic, Tracy. This is business. Family business. It's what we do. We protect our own. I did this for us. For you." "For me?" she shrieked, the sound tearing from her throat. "Don't you dare put this on me. You didn't do this for the family. You did it for yourself. For your own greed, your own pathetic need for power. You're no better than any of the other vipers we've known. You're worse. Because you pretended to be better." His composure finally cracked. "And what would you have had me do, Tracy? Let her strip us of our power? Let her hand ELQ over to Sonny Corinthos' illegitimate get or to one of your precious, scheming nephews? We are Quartermaines. This is our legacy. I preserved it. You destroyed it," she cried, tears now streaming freely down her face. "You destroyed it the moment you laid a hand on her. Monica was our legacy. Her decency, her strength, her compassion, that was the best of us. And you murdered it in cold blood. You're not a Quartermaine, Ronnie. You're a cancer. You're everything Father ever warned us about." She was gasping for air, her body shaking uncontrollably. The man standing before her was a murderer. Her brother, her confidant, her sanctuary, was a killer. The knowledge was a physical wound, a rending of her very soul. Every memory she had of him, every shared laugh, every moment of quiet support, was now tainted, poisoned by this horrific, unforgivable truth. "You have to turn yourself in," she said, her voice shaking but firming with a resolve born of sheer desperation. "You have to go to the police and tell them what you did." Ronnie let out a short, harsh laugh. "Don't be naive. That's not how this works. We stick together. We protect each other. That's the Quartermaine way. You're going to help me, Tracy. You're going to give me an alibi. You're going to tell them we were together the entire time." The audacity of it, the cold-blooded manipulation, left her reeling. "I will do no such thing. I will not be an accessory to murder. You already are, he said, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. He took a step toward her. You're my sister. You came here with me. You've already lied by omission. If I go down, Tracy, I'll take you with me. I'll tell them it was your idea. That you were the one who was so enraged by Monica's betrayal. That you provided the motive, and I was just the weak-willed brother who carried out your wishes. Tracy stared at him, her blood turning to ice in her veins. He meant it. He would drag her down into the abyss with him without a second thought. The brother she loved was gone, replaced by this ruthless, terrifying stranger who would sacrifice anyone, even her, to save his own skin. They'll never believe you, she whispered, but the conviction was gone from her voice. Won't they? He countered, a cruel smile touching his lips. Think about it, Tracy. Your history of scheming is far more extensive than mine. Who would the district attorney be more likely to believe was the mastermind? The quiet, unassuming brother, or the famously ruthless Tracy Quartermaine? You've spent a lifetime building a reputation as a cutthroat businesswoman. Now, it's going to save us both. He moved closer still, until he was looming over her. The scent of his cologne, once a familiar comfort, now made her nauseous. This is how it's going to be, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. We present a united front. We grieve for our beloved sister-in-law. We express our outrage that anyone could think a member of this family could be capable of such a heinous act. And we use every resource at our disposal to point the finger elsewhere. Do you understand me? Tracy could only stare, paralyzed by the magnitude of her predicament. To defy him was to risk her own freedom, her own life. To comply was to become his accomplice, to live the rest of her days with the blood of Monica Quartermaine on her hands, a silent partner to a monstrous crime. It was a choice between two different kinds of hell. The door to the library opened again, and Nicholas stood there, his expression unreadable. The police would like to speak with both of you now, he said, his gaze flicking from Tracy's tear-streaked face to Ronnie's composed, steely demeanor. Ronnie immediately slipped back into his role. He placed a comforting arm around Tracy's shoulders, a gesture that now felt like the coiling of a serpent. It's all right, Tracy, he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. We'll get through this. Together. As a family. She flinched at his touch but didn't pull away. The weight of his arm was an iron shackle. She allowed him to guide her toward the door, her legs moving on autopilot. As they walked past Nicholas, she met the Cassadine Lord's eyes for a fleeting second. Did she see a flicker of understanding there? A hint of pity? Or was it just her own desperate hope for an ally in this waking nightmare? They descended the grand staircase, the eyes of the assembled police officers and family retainers upon them. Tracy felt like she was on display, a puppet in a play directed by her murderous brother. Every step was an agony. The opulent foyer of Windmere, with its vaulted ceilings and ancient tapestries, felt like a courtroom. The lead detective, a serious-faced woman with a no-nonsense air, stepped forward. Mr. and Ms. Quartermaine, thank you for your time. We just need to clarify a few details about your movements last night. Ronnie gave a gracious, somber nod. Of course, detective. We want to help in any way we can. This is a devastating tragedy for our family. Tracy stood beside him, her body rigid. She felt the pressure of his hand on her arm, a silent command. She looked at the detective, at the expectant faces around her. She opened her mouth to speak, to scream the truth, to denounce the monster standing so calmly beside her. But the words wouldn't come. All that emerged was a choked, strangled sound. The image of Monica, kind and steadfast Monica, lying dead on the floor of her office, flashed before her eyes. Then the image of her son, Dylan, his future. The specter of prison. The ruin of the Quartermaine name. Ronnie gave her arm a slight, reassuring squeeze. It was the most terrifying gesture she had ever experienced. Yes, detective, Tracy heard herself say, her voice a hollow echo of its usual self. We'll tell you everything we know. And in that moment, as she began to construct the lie that would shield a killer, Tracy Quartermaine died a little inside. The horror was no longer just a discovery, it had become her prison. The truth was a bomb that had detonated in the heart of her family, and she was now standing in the radioactive fallout, forced to choose between salvation and survival, knowing that whichever path she took, a part of her soul would be forever lost to the darkness her brother had unleashed. The game was afoot, and the stakes were no longer money or power, but her very humanity. And as she began to speak, weaving a tapestry of half-truths and calculated omissions, she knew that the real horror was only just beginning. Tracy Quartermaine was never one to be easily shaken. She had seen death, betrayal, and heartbreak too many times in her life to be naive anymore. But nothing, not even decades of Quartermaine chaos, could have prepared her for the sight she walked into that night. Monica's lifeless body lay on the cold marble floor of the Quartermaine mansion, the same home that had seen countless family battles and reconciliations. Tracy's heart stopped. "Monica," she whispered, her voice trembling in disbelief. She dropped to her knees beside her sister-in-law, shaking her slightly, hoping against hope that she would open her eyes and tell her it was all just one of those twisted Quartermaine misunderstandings. "Monica, wake up! This isn't funny." But Monica's stillness was the only answer. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Tracy heard footsteps behind her, slow, deliberate, heavy. She turned around, and her eyes met Ronnie's. For a moment, she couldn't process what she was seeing. Ronnie D'Onofrio, a family acquaintance and supposed ally, stood there with an expression that sent chills down her spine. His hands were trembling, and there was something dark smeared on his sleeve, blood. "Ronnie," she breathed out, rising shakily to her feet. "What happened here? What did you do?" His jaw tightened, his eyes darting between her and Monica's body. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," he muttered, his voice hoarse. She wouldn't listen. She kept pushing, and Tracy's breath hitched. "You killed her?" she said, her voice cracking. "You killed Monica?" Ronnie's silence was enough of an answer. He took a step back, looking panicked now, as though the gravity of what he'd done had only just hit him. Tracy's shock turned to rage. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she snapped, tears pooling in her eyes. "Monica was the heart of this family. After everything we've been through, after all the times she saved us from falling apart, you took her away." Ronnie's breathing quickened. "It was an accident," he barked, defensively. "She came at me. She knew too much about what I was doing with the Quartermaine accounts, and she threatened to expose me. I didn't mean for it to go this far." Tracy was trembling now, her body caught between grief and fury. "You greedy, pathetic fool," she spat. "You killed her because she had integrity. Because she was trying to protect this family from your disgusting schemes. How dare you stand there and justify it?" Ronnie's voice cracked. "I didn't want to hurt her," he shouted, slamming his fist against the doorframe. "It just happened. I lost control." Tracy took a deep breath, fighting to steady herself. "You lost control?" she repeated, incredulous. "That's your excuse? You lost control, and now Monica's dead?" He ran his hands through his hair, pacing, his guilt consuming him. "I'm sorry," he said finally, voice breaking. "Tracy, I didn't mean for you to see this." "I was going to," she cut him off sharply. "What? Hide her body? Pretend nothing happened? You think you could cover this up? You think you could erase Monica from our lives like she was nothing?" Tracy's voice echoed through the mansion, the sound of it slicing through the air like a blade. Ronnie's face hardened. "You don't understand. I can't go to prison, Tracy. I've got people after me. If this gets out..." She took a step closer, her glare fierce. "You think I care about your little criminal friends? You took away one of the only people I had left." Her voice faltered slightly, grief sneaking through the anger. "She was my sister-in-law. My friend. The only one who ever really saw through my walls. And now she's gone because of you." Ronnie reached out as if to calm her, but Tracy slapped his hand away with disgust. "Don't touch me," she hissed. "You're a murderer." Ronnie's face twisted with desperation. Tracy, listen, maybe we can work something out. You and I both know how this town works. We spin a story. Say she fell, hit her head, stop. Tracy shouted, shaking her head violently. Don't you dare insult Monica's memory by turning her death into one of your manipulative games. I won't let you. Her hands were trembling, but her eyes were cold now, filled with resolve. You're going to pay for what you did. Ronnie's eyes widened in fear. You're not going to the cops, he said darkly. You wouldn't do that. Tracy's laugh was bitter. You think I won't? You've clearly forgotten who I am. She stepped closer, her voice low and deadly. You might be dangerous, Ronnie, but so am I. And if you think I'll protect you after this, you're even dumber than I thought. Ronnie's expression shifted, realizing she meant every word. He backed away, panic flickering across his face. Tracy, please, I can fix this. I'll turn myself in, I just need time. She shook her head. You don't deserve time. You deserve to rot for what you've done. At that moment, the front door burst open, and Detective Chase stormed in, gun drawn, with Dante close behind. Nobody move! Chase shouted. Tracy stumbled back, tears streaking down her cheeks. He killed her, she whispered hoarsely, pointing at Ronnie. He killed Monica. Dante's eyes widened as he took in the scene, Monica's lifeless body on the floor, Ronnie frozen in shock, and Tracy shaking uncontrollably. Put your hands up, Ronnie! Chase barked. No! Ronnie hesitated, looking between them, his mind racing for an escape. But there was nowhere to run. Dante moved in, cuffing him while reading his rights. Ronnie didn't resist, he just kept staring at Monica, guilt consuming every inch of him. It wasn't supposed to end like this, he murmured as Chase let him out. Tracy's knees buckled, and Dante caught her before she fell. Tracy, hey, easy, he said softly. We've got him. He won't hurt anyone else. But Tracy barely heard him. Her eyes were locked on Monica's face, pale and peaceful, as if she were merely sleeping. She didn't deserve this, Tracy whispered, her voice breaking. She didn't deserve to die like that. Dante nodded solemnly. We'll make sure he pays. Hours later, as the mansion emptied and the coroner's van drove away, Tracy sat alone in the living room. The fire had burned low, casting a soft glow on the family portraits lining the walls. She looked up at one of them, a photo of Monica and Alan from years ago. You always said this house would be the death of us, she said softly, her voice barely audible. And as usual, you were right. A tear rolled down her cheek, and she didn't bother to wipe it away. Ned entered quietly, his expression a mix of sorrow and confusion. Mother, he said gently. Tracy turned to him, her eyes hollow. She's gone, Ned, she said simply. Ronnie killed her. Ned froze, the words hitting him like a sledgehammer. What? He whispered. No. That can't be, Monica? Tracy nodded. He said it was an accident. But I saw the look in his eyes. It wasn't an accident. He was covering his tracks. She found out he'd been siphoning money from the Quartermaine trust funds. Ned's jaw clenched. That bastard. He sat beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. We'll make sure he never sees the light of day again. Tracy nodded numbly. I want him to suffer, Ned. Not just prison. I want him to feel every ounce of pain he caused this family. I want him to know what it's like to lose everything. Later, at the PCPD, Ronnie sat in the interrogation room, his hands cuffed to the table. Chase entered, setting a file down with a heavy thud. You want to start talking? He asked coolly. Ronnie stared at the table. It was an accident, he muttered again. Chase leaned forward. You expect me to believe that? You pushed her, she hit her head, and instead of calling for help, you tried to stage a cover-up. That's not an accident, that's murder. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Tracy wandered through the halls, memories of Monica flooding her mind, their arguments, their laughter, their shared grief over losing Alan and AJ. For all their differences, Monica had always been her anchor, the one person who refused to give up on her even when she was at her worst. And now she was gone. When Brooklyn arrived, she immediately rushed to her grandmother, tears in her eyes. "Grandma, I heard, is it true?" Tracy nodded slowly, pulling her into an embrace. "She's gone, darling," she whispered. "Ronnie took her from us." Brooklyn sobbed against her shoulder. "She was so kind to me. She didn't deserve this." As the Quartermaines gathered that night, Ned, Brooklyn, Lois, and even Drew, the atmosphere was thick with grief. The mansion felt emptier than it ever had before. Tracy stood by the fireplace, a glass of brandy in her hand, staring into the flames. "Monica loved this house," she said quietly. "She said it reminded her that no matter how broken we were still a family." She took a shaky breath. "But tonight, it feels like the heart of this family died with her." Drew placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll rebuild, Tracy," he said softly. "For Monica." Tracy gave a faint, bitter smile. "That's what we Quartermaines always say, isn't it? We rebuild. But somehow, the cracks just keep getting deeper." In the coming days, Port Charles would reel from the shocking news. The hospital staff mourned one of their finest, and the Quartermaine legacy took another tragic blow. But for Tracy, the horror of that night would never fade. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Monica's still face, and Ronnie's blood-stained hands. And though justice would be served, Tracy knew nothing could ever truly make it right. Because no matter how many times life tore the Quartermaines apart, Monica was always the one who held them together. Now, without her, Tracy feared they might finally crumble for good. But she made a silent vow that night to protect Monica's memory, to make sure the world never forgot the woman she was, and to ensure Ronnie paid for every moment of peace he stole from them. As the fire crackled in the silence of the mansion, Tracy whispered one last time into the emptiness, "Goodbye, Monica. You deserved so much more."